Prise de débat. Resuming debate. The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm very proud to be here today and to take part in this debate on behalf of the citizens of the great riding of Timmins Bay James. The bill this morning on changes to the criminal code, which would give more powers to the police with regard to impaired drivers or drivers impaired by drugs or alcohol. This bill was drafted in response to the Liberal government's pledge to legalize marijuana. I have many questions about this bill, Madam Speaker. First, today, there is no credible test to assess the impact of drugs on drivers. So I have a problem with that, because where are the resources? Where are the tools to help the police to deal with this reality? Where are the resources for a national awareness campaign to help Canadians understand the implications of legalizing marijuana? I also have another problem with this bill. Not the decision of the Liberal government to increase the powers of the police to stop drivers. Not the least is the power of police to stop drivers randomly. Today in Canada, the law gives police the necessary powers, but while protecting the rights of individuals. And this bill concerns me because this balance between the rights of citizens and the police has been reversed.
Of our response as a society to the legalization of marijuana is an important question for Parliament. Certainly, we've seen too many people's lives affected by having permanent records for having been charged for the recreational use of marijuana. And I applaud the government for moving in the direction of legalization. But I have a number of questions about the lack of preparedness from this government to offer our society the protections that are necessary to ensure that police have the resources they need to ensure a balance, and also to maintain that fundamental balance that exists right now between the rights of citizens to know that their streets are safe from drunk and drug-impaired drivers, and the right of individuals to be protected from unnecessary stop and search. So we don't have it right now in Canada a credible, simple, clear test to prove the influence of drugs. And that's a serious question. So we have to ask ourselves what resources will be in place for the police in dealing with this. That's a straightforward question, Madam Speaker. But in response to this, what we see from the government is, because there's no credible test for marijuana, they are going to move forward with arbitrary, mandatory tests for alcohol impairment without reason. And I'm very concerned about that, because that is an undermining of the principle that has been established in this country about the need for just cause. Right now, in Canada, if a police officer believes that a driver is impaired from drugs or alcohol, they have the right to stop that vehicle and demand a test. And that's fair. They have the right, identified by court, to set up programs, the RIDE program, where you can stop for a limited period of time all drivers and test them. But it is proven that it is not targeting individuals, because it is applied fairly across the board at times of Christmas or other times where there may be high levels of drinking. But the fact that we would add a provision that could allow police to stop an individual anytime, anywhere, and demand tests, to me, is an undermining of the basic questions of the Charter. And I think that we have to be looking at why this government is moving in this direction. You know, in the case of R versus Oakes, there was a simple test that the measures that adopted must be carefully designed to achieve the objective in question, which is, of course, the protection of society and the maintaining of individual rights. They must not be arbitrary, unfair, or based on irrational considerations. This means that even if rationally connected to the objective in the first place, which would be stopping drunk driving, they should impair as little as possible the right or freedom in question. And why is this so important, Madam Speaker? Well, we do know right now that if you go to court on any given day, you're never going to see upper middle class white teenagers in court for marijuana possession. Never. It's racialized. It's immigrant. It's Indigenous. The targeting of certain groups is a fact. And if you represent a rural region like I do, you want to ensure that our roads are safe, but you also want to ensure that powers are not being abused to target people just because of who they are. They talk about driving while black, driving while Indigenous. These protections have to be maintained. And this is what civil society is based on, the rule of law, that we have brought these tests to the Supreme Court. We have tested them. We've tested to ensure that we still have the powers that are necessary to go after drunk driving, while ensuring that the tools that the police have do not exceed the limits, so that they're not unfairly targeting certain individuals who, just because perhaps of their economic disposition, where they live, the color of their skin, are being identified for harassment. And so it always strikes me with the Liberals, the so-called party of the Charter, that whenever they can, they overreach on these issues. These are fundamental principles that we need to talk about. We are all invested in this, of finding that balance, because we want safe streets, but we also want to know that the rule of law, to ensure that the police do not overstep, is protected. And I'm very concerned about this, Madam Speaker, in terms of this change that's coming. So it leads us back to the fact that this is being added in on alcohol when they don't have a credible test for drugs. And we need to start a major campaign of awareness, public awareness, about the legalization of drugs and how we're going to start to apply that so that people are more aware. There was a huge campaign of public awareness over drinking and driving that had a major impact in reducing the people's decision after a Christmas party to get behind the wheel. That was a very successful campaign. It was maintained, of course, through having credible powers of police and a credible test that could be applied in court, that could be tested. And it was a clear test. But we don't have that with marijuana. So to simply say, well, we'll add more mandatory searches of people left, right, and center is not going to address that fundamental problem. And I'm surprised that the government is attempting to go in this direction, because we will see major questions in terms of the Section 1 Charter liabilities over the rights of citizens. So, Madam Speaker, when we talk about adding more rights of citizens in this country, the right to smoke marijuana legally, we have to also then say what resources we have to protect society. And then from that, the question of how to make sure that those tools that the police and authorities have do not exceed their respective authority and protects the individual rights of Canadians. And I see with this government a complete overreach, that they're using the issue of the legalization of marijuana to add tools in the police toolbox that they should not have, that have been found by the courts to exceed and to undermine the rights of citizens. So there are some fundamental problems that have to be addressed, and I believe that within this Parliament we can address those issues because they are complicated. They don't necessarily have to fall down on party lines. What we have to do is find out what are the right tools to protect society and to protect the rights of individuals, and at this point this government doesn't seem like they found that balance. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires?